the present and future of automation on macOS and iOS. This is MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is supported by Clear. Get to the front of the line faster, safer, touchless. Get 2 months of Clear free at clearme.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, it's Tuesday night. This is MacVoices Live. We are live on YouTube. We would love to have you join us there in the chat at youtube.com/MacVoicesTV, or you can always watch this later as we release it to the feeds and comment and send us emails. But the live chat thing is just a whole lot more fun. So, make sure you sign up for Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, because that's what it is now, and that's why we're here. Tonight, we don't have a set specific topic. We have a bunch of little things that kind of came up in the last week or so, and there's no real hot news. And I think we're all just a little bit exhausted after last week's marathon WWDC sessions. So I definitely wanted, though, to do some follow-ups because we had a couple requests from panelists. We had an idea sent in by a listener. So that's where we're going to start. We'll see where it takes us. But first, let's go around the room to see who all's here and find out who's going to be commenting on what. So let's see. I'm going to go from the top down and start with Mr. Jay Miller. Jay, welcome. It's good to have you.
I'm first. I'm first for something in my life for the first time. I'm first.
The new phone book is here.
Don't get excited, Jay. You can't cash it in for anything. Sorry.
Oh, poop.
David Ginsburg is here with us as well. David, good to see you.
Good to see you. Glad to be here. It's been a long day, but always look forward to being here.
Yeah. All that other stuff will just fade into the background as we dig in here. My death metal buddy is here, Andrew Orr. Andrew, it's good to see you.
Hey, good to be here. I'm glad you enjoyed that song.
I did. I'm looking forward to it. Now Jay has given us both something to look at, so we've got to go do that after the show. So, and folks, if you want to know, you have to pay attention to the pre-show, and then you'd know what we're talking about. Jim Ray has joined us. He won't let WWDC go. He's still got the picture up. Jim, great to have you.
Just can't leave.
Can't
Just waiting
go
for Uber.
Yeah.
Let's wait for a ride.
Lyft.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Frank Petrie is here with I keep thinking it's just a look out of his spaceship window, but he claims it's a rift in space-time. I don't know. Frank, good to have you. Whatever.
Well, it's nice to be had, and it's a little cold in here and the oxygen's depleting, so I should be able to get an hour.
Okay, that may explain some of your commentary as we go forth.
Yeah, that's a good excuse. I never thought of that.
Yeah. Last but absolutely not least, Kelly Guimont got here under the wire. Kelly, it's great to have you.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me back again.
Hey, it's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure. So I think we're going to start out. We're going to turn to Jim Ray because Jim did a little bit of research on some of our shortcuts discussion. And I wanted to put that sort of at the top because it wasn't exactly where we ended last time, but it was very heavy in the discussion. So Jim, what else have you found out about shortcuts coming to the Mac?
Well, I just had one clarification because we had a discussion about whether AppleScripts were going away last week. You may remember. And a lot of people seem to think that it was. And the short story is it's not. So Automator is probably going to go away, but AppleScripts is not going to go away. So the things that I found out about that were, first of all, they have actually built an AppleScript editor into the Shortcuts app on the Mac. So it's not just, a question of, well, you could build a shortcut and if you already had it sitting there, you could use it. They've actually built that into Shortcuts. So that's a first-class citizen. You can go into the shortcut editor as you're building a shortcut and say, oh, I need an AppleScript. Boom. You edit it right there. So, and then, see, I should probably go look back at that Slack comment I sent you. That's one reason I sent it in. Oh, right. I guess even better than that. I talked to some people Wednesday night, including Sal Segoyan, and he, agreed that, yeah, they're not going to, in fact, Sal said, my work is done, and I can retire in peace now. Is what what he said, and he was very thrilled about everything. Probably most of you on the panel know about Sal, but maybe if there's people watching that don't, Sal was at Apple for about 25 years, and he was the automation evangelist at Apple and was the person responsible for bringing Automator to Steve Jobs and getting that to his attention and getting it into the keynote and into the operating system. So I talked to him last Wednesday, and he was just thrilled with all this. And he said that, shortcuts clearly, they have a high profile. They've got a lot of capital that he was like, we never were able to get that much. So hopefully, they've got the capital that, they're going to make sure that automation goes strong for years to come. And, clearly they're not going to, put shortcut or AppleScript into the shortcut editor, have people, build automations with it, and then 2 years from now say, oh yeah, we're getting rid of that. I also talked with Mark Aldrich, who makes Script Debugger from Late Night Software, and he was like, yeah, I think this is, we're good to go. This is, if anything, it's going to, bring more attention to AppleScript, sort of as a side effect. So, and also I listened to David Sparks, the Mac Power Users podcast last week. They had an interview, and I don't remember the person's name from Apple, unfortunately, but it was somebody related to shortcuts, although I don't think it was a technical person. But he was asked about AppleScript, and he said, yes, absolutely, AppleScript is, a permanent fixture. It's not going anywhere. Automator is pretty much replaced by shortcuts. They didn't take it out, but they probably will at some point in the future. But AppleScript kind of does a different thing. And everybody I talked to had the same take I did, which was that the shortcuts team did a great job of bringing us to the Mac. Pretty much everybody was like, wow, they actually really did it in a first-class way that was very integrated with what was already there, in automation, and they didn't take anything away. They just added to it. So that's basically the story that I had.
Okay, well, thank you. If Sal sees this, Sal, you're not allowed to retire. Period. Sorry, can't do it. We need you too much. We don't want you to go away. But I would think this has to be gratifying to Sal, to see as much time and effort and evangelism as he put into AppleScript, that it's going to stay there and have a permanent place. Shortcuts just makes it feel like it'll be that much more approachable, which, I really like that. Frank, you had something you wanted to add.
Yeah. I've been wanting to redo my rig here. As it turns out, my iMac is the last one that you can get Monterey on. So I was toying with going PC, iPad Pro centric. But this morning, I read something very interesting. And that's Pixelmator Pro has announced that they're going to incorporate shortcuts into their app.
Yes.
I gotta have that. And so now I'm like, maybe the iMac, because it had a nice looking screen. But as soon as I heard that Pixelmator Pro is going to do shortcuts, I'm like, if and this goes back to like what Patrice was talking about last week, it may very well end up being that the indie developers bring all this stuff about, and push this stuff forward, because a lot of the people that are looking into the code are finding some interesting little details. I watched a thing on YouTube the other day, 35 things that Apple didn't tell you about iPad OS, and the little noogey things that you would never think of that drive you batty. For example, one thing, I have problems with my hands, right? And so I tend, if I have my iPhone, to dictate. And the problem is when you hit dictate, it runs for, I think it's 60 seconds.
45.
45?
Yeah.
Apple has done away with that.
Yep. It's gone.
It will now
Very
run
good.
as long as you want it to, and you turn it off.
Which I'm
I mean,
excited
so
about.
I'm really thinking Patrice is on to something. I think the indies really are going to make this fly.
And when you think about it, I mean, literally that's where this came from, right? Workflow was an app that was built for iOS and put out in the world by the workflow people who just wanted to take advantage of some of the options available to you on iOS. And they were just basically trying to find a way to do some of the automated things that people want to be able to do, you know, and repeat those steps over and over again. So like indie developers gave us this in the first place. I mean, Workflow was indie before Apple bought it and then turned it into shortcuts and then made shortcuts part, you know, something that macOS could use. And part of when I was thinking about this, when we were hearing more about shortcuts and about things, about how things were going to work, even before we got the Pixelmator Pro announcement, a thing that I was thinking about was that it sort of feels like Automator was Apple's attempt to make the automation piece of macOS approachable to end users. That's why you get the little friendly robot icon, etc. But they were never able to do that the way shortcuts did. Even the way Workflow did, the way Launch Center Pro did initially. Like if you want to go back that far, however, you know, I don't remember what year that was, but like Launch Center Pro, I remember that being an amazing thing. And I remember shortcuts, Workflow coming out and being something great. And then Apple bought Workflow and turned it into shortcuts. And I feel like it's really sort of Automator in its final evolution, so to speak, is that like this is a thing that's approachable, that a lot of people have used already, even if there's just like they have like one or two shortcuts with tiny little steps in them, you know, that they're using. Like this is a way to bring automation and have those repetitive tasks, you know, that happen over and over, like being able to sort of capture that process once and then hand it off to your computer and just tell your computer do that series of steps over and over again is really great. And I think like I'm excited about it because yes, I think Automator, I think it's Automator's days that are numbered, not AppleScript. I think AppleScript is really just going to be sort of the extra 4 cylinders of horsepower in Automator's back pocket on macOS, because you're going to have the opportunity to use AppleScript to really level up if you're somebody that was familiar with it already. Like this is just giving you a brand new set of tools so that you can wield AppleScript effectively. And for people who are really awesome, people like Andrew and people like Brittany, who use truckloads of shortcuts and build all kinds of shortcuts and are able to find all the ways to take advantage of all of that, being able to take that skill set and turn to your laptop and look at your laptop and go, now I can also use all of the power of AppleScript with all of the stuff that I'm able to do with shortcuts. I think that sounds really exciting. So like the people I thought of first when they were talking about bringing shortcuts to the Mac was the first thing I thought was, what's going to happen to Automator? Because Automator's who's getting it in this scenario. It's not AppleScript. It's definitely Automator. And I'm sad because I really thought Otto, the robot, was very cute. But it was Brittany and Andrew and Rosemary Orchard and people who like and like Jay, like people who live and die in automation and spend a lot of time there making it so that something repeatable can be repeated more easily and turning that into something great. So I'm really excited to see where this ends up. And then part of that's only compounded by the announcement from Pixelmator. And I'm sure more people are going to come along and go, yeah, we're going to do shortcut stuff too. Like, just wait. You know, like look at all the stuff that people were able to do when Workflow was an app that was available in the App Store, but didn't have any sort of special entitlements, didn't have any higher level access to anything, wasn't an integral part of the operating system. And look what people could do with all of that. And now that it is, and it's first party, and it's something where you get, you know, unmitigated access to the system. I know it's not like all the way down, but like you get way more access with shortcuts than you ever could with Workflow. And seeing what you can do with that is going to be awesome.
Yeah, Kelly, I like what you said because it was something I had sort of indicated that this feels so much more approachable, and yet it's still the power of AppleScript is under there. I think more people are maybe inclined to do that. We're very fortunate on the Mac platform to have some great automation tools at all levels. I mean, at one level, Text Expander is an automation tool. Keyboard Maestro is an automation tool, and I'm probably 3 or 4 others that I'm blanking on right now, but and they're from third parties. And we've had Automator, which was good, but it always felt a little bit limited. And AppleScript is a little intimidating if you aren't a coder or don't want to take the time to do it. And Shortcuts just kind of sits right on top of all that and is so approachable that I can figure out how to do something, and that's going to encourage me, since it wasn't that hard, to do something else and do something else and keep digging deeper into automation. And Andrew, I want to know what your reaction is to some of this new information and how you see it fitting into your world.
Yeah, so Shortcuts for Mac was definitely on my Apple wish list. I think it's so awesome. And like Kelly was saying, I haven't really dug into AppleScript that much, but I have used Automator, and compared to Shortcuts, to me, it does seem kind of limited. I can do way more with Shortcuts than I can with Automator. And I think it's great, as we were saying before, Pixelmator Pro is going to be integrated with Shortcuts for the Mac. They do already integrate with Automator, which is also great. But I guess it's just what we were saying before. I just feel like there are way more third-party services integrated with Shortcuts than there are on Automator. And Automator was probably, a first good beginning. And I feel like, with a workflow acquisition, they learned from both that app and Automator and just combined it. And now they're like, trying to transition into this new world.
I understand from the chat room that Jay is bursting. So let's relieve the pressure.
Oh, no. I just have a general question. Does shortcut support mean that there are AppleScript endpoints developed for the application? Like, are the two one and the same? Is that what shortcuts? No. Okay. No. Let me lower my hand. Hold on. It was. Oh no! I'm just pushing all the wrong buttons here. All right, there we go. As much as AppleScript continues to live on, has anyone seen the old cartoons that has like the grandmother that is very, 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 very aged, or maybe Coco? Like, that's a good example where you have the grandmother in the corner of the room and everyone's just like, one of these days. But no, she's still there, still kicking. I fully am okay with the fact that AppleScript isn't going away. However, I don't believe that new applications will provide the level of support with AppleScript that we have become accustomed to with these amazing apps that we have used for years. And a good example of that is an app that I use a lot, Craft. Craft is using Catalyst. Craft has AppleScript support. It is extremely limited. There are so many things that I cannot do because they've just hit the wave tops. They've touched only the things that they feel are absolutely important for like system level stuff. And other than that, they don't do anything else. So what does that mean? Well, like most programming languages, cough, cough, Perl, sure, it'll keep living. But to what extent? Will it thrive? Will it really, is this like the new coming of AppleScript 2.0? And I remember, Jim, you said something last week that I was like, that's not going to happen. It was like the idea of like new people being introduced to AppleScript and falling in love with it and being like, I'm going to make AppleScript the thing and it's going to be the best thing ever. I don't think it's going to happen because I don't think that the newer applications out there are going to support it at a level to make it happen. I think they'll do shortcuts. They'll let shortcuts be the thing. And anything beyond that, they're just going to go, oh, I guess you can't do it.
Today's edition of MacVoices is supported by Clear. Get to the front of the line faster, safer, and touchless with Clear. Here are the facts about Clear that you need to know before taking your next trip. Clear gets you to the front of the security line at the airport fast and easy by letting you use just your face or your eyes to identify you as you. No pulling out your ID, no nasty looks from the security staff because your photo doesn't look like you. Sign up is easy. Start online, finish at the airport, and begin using Clear right away on that very first trip at over 35 airports around the country. And that doesn't even include the stadiums, arenas, concert spaces, and more where Clear has been deployed to help cut down on the lines. Not traveling alone? Of course you're not. Add up to 3 friends or family members to your account for a discounted rate and take the kids under 18 along for free. When I first heard about Clear, I admit I was skeptical. How good could it really be? Then I tried it, found out it was better than I expected, and now I won't fly without it. You shouldn't either if you care about time, convenience, and reducing the stress that comes with travel. Clear is the absolute best way to help you get back to what you love. They have locations in over 35 airports across the country, making it safer, easier, and faster to reunite with loved ones or take that much-needed vacation. It works great with PreCheck, too. And right now, for a limited time, you can get your first 2 months of Clear for free. Go to clearme.com/MacVoices and use the code MacVoices. That's clear, CLEAR, me.com/MacVoices, and the code MacVoices for your first 2 months of Clear for free. clearme.com/MacVoices and the code MacVoices. Enjoy your vacation, and thanks to Clear for their support of MacVoices.
But
No
what
one
if it's
has ever fallen in love with shortcuts.
You mean
I'm
AppleScript?
sorry. I mean AppleScript.
I was gonna say I know 2 people personally.
No, I meant
can say that
AppleScript.
about.
That has never happened in 25 years. And I
Well,
should
Sal,
clarify.
maybe Sal might
Yeah,
be in love with
maybe
may
Sal.
have fallen in love with AppleScript, but even that's only a maybe, and he's basically like
It's like
the
you're my
poster
child. I have
boy
to love you.
for
I don't
AppleScript.
like you.
yeah.
And I think last week, to clarify, don't think I've even used an AppleScript in at least 5 years. And I've never used shortcuts. I do a lot of automation, but not in those languages. But I do have friends that are, my app supports AppleScript, and I have, friends that are in that community for various reasons, like Mark at Late Night Software. So I'm pretty tuned into what's going on. And, I don't think anybody thinks that AppleScript is going to thrive and become, a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
But in that community, every year, there's sort of like everybody's like, is this the year they actually remove it? Okay. So when people say AppleScript isn't going away, that's literally what they mean. It's not that it's going to get better but okay. It seems pretty certain that it probably isn't going to get removed for a long time because, it's got its spot, and that's not going to take over or anything. But, if you're doing work to invest in that, and that's also, talk about okay, I'm really surprised that you mentioned Craft, has some AppleScript support. Really? They have any AppleScript support? That's kind of, incredible. That's surprising. A lot of apps don't have any. And, that's going to be a problem for shortcuts too. I mean, that's not really an issue of the language. It's an issue of developers seeing customers demand that, we want to do this because it's, it takes an investment from the developer. And if they don't see customers, asking questions about it or wanting it, that's not where, they're going to put their resources where they think they're going to get return on it. So that's, and it's interesting because if somebody's added any AppleScript support, then they've gone over the delta, they've figured out how to do it, and so they could probably add more without so if people I would say you should go bug them and say maybe you already have, but do more things, and if they hear enough of that, maybe they'll do it. But I think that's a very customer demand. Developers see that it's not really a technical issue, and probably the way shortcut support is done is it's actually through the Siri interface of all things. You add what are called Siri intents, so that's how you support shortcuts. But probably the big issue with that is making points in your program that are accessible to the outside, period. So if somebody did add, Siri intents, it probably wouldn't be that much more work to do AppleScript also if there was any reason to. And most likely, well, in fact, actually already, since, shortcuts are accessible from the command line. I don't know if you guys caught that, but that means that an AppleScript could access shortcut enabled stuff. So if an app is supporting shortcuts, then an AppleScript could access that. So it's all like, it's all interconnected. So, but the good news is that, it does appear that Apple has, made a commitment that, yep, you can stop worrying that AppleScript support is going to get removed at next year's WWDC. Because they just said nothing for years. And, now they've actually made a statement and actually put it into this new software. Frank, I one thing I was going to comment on your thing. Now, I love my iPad. I could never imagine being iPad centric, but I would wonder why this Pixelmator Pro announcement would have any bearing on that, because if they add shortcut support, aren't they going to add it for both platforms? I didn't see that level of detail on the announcement, but I would think if they were going to add support, it would be on both Mac and iPad.
Really don't know. I'll tell you honestly, the thing is, I'm going to go back to the Apple Store this week. And from a financial status, for me to go iPad centric and using a trade-in with my old iMac, I could get a bit more going for the iMac financially. So when I heard that, they're going to bring shortcuts to Pixelmator, it just sort of seemed like one more little thing pushing me.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So it's not that you're deciding on the basis of that. It's just like you were thinking that you were going to miss having shortcuts for Pixelmator Pro on the Mac, and you're like, oh, yeah, I won't miss it. Yeah. Well,
there's several apps I love to use. I mean, when I was looking at the iPad centric, the one thing there was apps I knew I was going to miss. Rogue Amiga's apps, I love.
That's another app suite that doesn't have really good AppleScript support. Is
Really?
Audio Hijack.
It does not. I mean, there's some, but it's not deep.
Audio Hijack has none. I've emailed the developer. They've just said, no, we're not going to support it. I'm hoping that they'll support shortcuts, but usually they're in a fight with just getting their devices working on
it released
M1 chips. So.
Let alone anything else.
Well, Apple cut them down on something, didn't they?
They tend on the regular. Yes.
Yeah.
It's always just happened, and it's always about to happen again. That's just how it works with Rogue Amoeba.
One problem for developers is that Apple, they really poorly documented how to make an AppleScript app. And it's not that hard, but it is hard you can't really do it just from material from Apple. You kind of have to scour Stack Overflow and find an old Matt Newberg post and, stuff like that. And, there's been no one at Apple promoting it or shepherding it, even to the point of putting the documentation together in one place and having some sample code. So, developers that do it, you kind of have to say, yay, you pushed through, all the obstacles and did it.
Well, I think part of what might make this more exciting is when you think about iOS apps are able to run on macOS via Catalyst. And so iOS apps that already have all kinds of shortcut support sort of for free could potentially, I don't know any of this. This is all conjecture. But it's possible that something that has good shortcut support on iOS, once it becomes a Catalyst app and that Mac version is released, then that Mac version may also have Mac shortcut support that would also be very easy to use. So it's entirely possible that a lot of apps that people are accustomed to running on iOS are going to get that sort of support for free, so to speak, because you don't have to do anything additional if it continues to be compatible.
That I believe is correct.
And that makes for a more interesting avenue, I think, for a lot of people who are familiar with, I'm able to do stuff with Pixelmator Pro on my iPad already, and now like I can do that same sort of stuff, but just on my laptop instead of on my iPad. I feel like that avenue might be more exciting. And then if you're somebody like Brittany or Andrew, hi Brittany, who's doing all of that automation on iOS anyway, then not only like you won't bump up against the limits of shortcuts on your Mac, because if you get there, there's probably an AppleScript that will do that thing that you're trying to do. And that might put you in an even better position than you were on iOS.
Your speculation is exactly right. That last year it was like if you made a Catalyst app, you had to remove the shortcut support from it. You know, if you had an iOS app and you're making a Catalyst app, they're like, well, that's one of the things you have to take that out to make a Catalyst app because Catalyst doesn't support it. And this year, you know, one of the sessions was like, okay, remember that shortcut support you took out when you make a Catalyst app? Well, just put it back in, and and now it will work. So yeah, I think you're going to see almost everybody that, you know, makes Catalyst apps, if they support shortcuts on the iOS, then very quickly you're going to see that. And I guess also, of course, you know, on the Mac now on M1 machines, you can run iOS apps. And if they have shortcut support, they already have it. It already works. So, I think the shortcuts is, for Mac is a super exciting story. And the only AppleScript part of it is like, a little bit of that excitement is going to leak over onto AppleScript.
I think so.
That's basically, the story is shortcuts and AppleScript is just this side thing, but it's not going away. So if you need to do something in AppleScript, you don't have to worry that whatever my investment is,
that it's timing out.
is wasted.
So I've been trying to break in here and welcome Brittany Smith, who found her furry microphone and has joined us. Brittany, thanks so much for finding the mic. I mean, how could you disrespect the mic enough to lose it?
I was moving it from my last location, and I just hadn't unpacked it yet. It's been a slow podcasting week. What can I say?
Oh, okay. All right. Well, you've probably been listening to some of this, and we were just doing a bit of an update on shortcuts coming to the Mac, and so feel free to throw in any thoughts that you have, because we all know that you are a big shortcut user on iOS.
Yeah, and I'm really excited, and I've been a really good girl and not installed the beta on my Mac yet, just on my primary carry phone, and so I haven't gotten to play with it yet. But I am really excited, and this Pixelmator thing sounds awesome. There are so many. I've used the built-in editing tools and the ones from Toolbox Pro in shortcuts before, because sometimes you just need to do a little tweak to a whole bunch of images, and it's real fast to do it that way. So it could open up some really cool possibilities.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just optimistic, but I have a hard time seeing developers not want to build in shortcut support. And something I wanted to ask Jim, though.
It's the hotness right now.
Well, it's the hotness, but it's been the hotness now on iOS for a while, and it's definitely the hotness now on Mac. And David, I want to get you in a second, but I want to make sure I follow up with Jim on this, because this is a programming question that I'm not clear on. Jim, you said that that you implement this through Siri Intents. Was that the right phrase?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. So I'll simplify my question, and I may be showing my ignorance, but if I build a Siri Intent in, does that support Siri and shortcuts, or is that just a methodology to be able to support shortcuts in my app?
I'm not 100% sure because I haven't done it, but Siri, and I think it might allow some sort of I'm not sure. It's a thing that, originally before shortcuts, they had this thing called Siri Intents that was to allow third parties to be able to, you could Siri do this, and it could be a third party thing. So that's what that, it's essentially reach into an app and do an action, which is what shortcuts does. So I think when shortcuts came along, they were like, oh, we've already got this. Because you remember workflow, it used to do everything by URL schemes. I don't know if you remember that, but workflow, you would communicate between apps by using a URL with a funny extension, which was sort of a very poor man's, although very clever, method of letting apps talk to each other. So when they brought the shortcuts team on board, instead of continuing that, they said, oh, well, we've already got this inner process thing on iOS. It's for, we made it for Siri. So we're going to tap shortcuts into that. Whether that actually, I don't think that, I think there's something else. I think Apple has to bless an app. Like not every app doesn't work with Siri. I don't think. I'm not a big Siri user either. You can't just. I don't know.
It depends what it is you want to do. If it's just open it, you don't have to code anything special to say, hey, S Lady, open the app. If you want it to do anything in particular, you do have to talk. If you're gonna talk to her, I think that's a very different framework from the shortcuts app stuff that you can do. Right, Brittany?
With the intents, you can do quite a few things. Like these are the dub sessions I'm going to watch like all the way through, right? With the intents, you can do a few things. Like when you notice that, it says, would you like to use this app right now? Or would you like to like send a telegraph message to, Aunt Patty? Whatever it is, like that, it's like, oh, that's a very specific action, especially if it's within the app. That was a Siri intent. And in that case, it's being used as a suggestion, but it can also be grabbed. And I haven't played enough with it in iOS 15 yet to know if this is still true. But sometimes if you're like, I want to do this action and it's seriously not showing up for me, you just go into the app and do it a bunch of times. And then it's donating this, like, what's what they call it? Donating this intent multiple times. And then you look in there and the action will be there. It's just one of those things. They want to like not overwhelm people with the options, which is not always what the power users want, but it is sort of like the tricky way to get the action in there. If you think that the app will really like donate that intent, if I want to add lines to a spreadsheet, which I absolutely have shortcuts for that, in Numbers, then I just went and added lines and numbers over and over again until it was like, do you want to add it to this one spreadsheet? I'm like, you know what I do? Thanks. So it'll be used for multiple things. It could be like that Siri is suggesting it. It could be that it's an option in shortcuts. It could be that you can create like, your own words for it, but it's used for multiple things. And I can't remember the other things.
I think
but there's others.
The
machine learning things.
The donating to Siri, that was the original purpose of the Siri intents. So that actually is from WWDC like 4 or 5 years ago. And I don't think it got used very much. But then shortcuts came along and they're like, oh, we'll just plug that into shortcuts. So if an app happened to have done Siri intents, which I don't think many of them did off the bat, then they were already ready for shortcuts.
Yeah, and that was cool.
Okay, so if I followed what you both have said, that by building a Siri intent, I have the opportunity to hook Siri into my app and a shortcut into my app, and shortcuts, into my app.
You've made an action available to shortcuts to use if your users decide they want to add a line, if your users decide they want to play the thing, and do the thing to the stuff.
There was a really good session this year about like what makes a good shortcuts action. Yeah. For developers, especially coming from the Mac, who might want to try it for the first time, but also some iOS people could get the really like, in your face reminder of a lot of the times what we want to do with that is not inside the app. Sometimes it is like, when I use a particular timer app, I want it to start this specific interval timer. I want to do that in the app so I can keep watching the timer because I need help with time sometimes. Time is hard. And so I have this timer in it. It launches as part of a shortcut, and I want that in the app. But sometimes you want the action to happen in the background and not inside the app. Like actually, this isn't how it works, but I actually don't need to see that line in numbers appear as long as I'm sure that it has done it successfully in the past. Like, just add the line. I actually don't need to look at it at all. It does still actually open numbers, but hypothetically, I don't actually need to see that. And so you could just add it in the background. And that's one of those cool, really deep linking things that Shortcuts has been offering as an option for third parties.
The reason I was asking, though, is that if the answer is yes, and I think I just heard affirmation, this means that it's more incentive for developers to add those hooks, because now they can do double duty for both Siri and Shortcuts.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I haven't played.
That feels like it has the opportunity to push automation and voice control both together forward.
That was the goal, because originally Shortcuts was Workflow was bought by the Siri team as a way to expand Siri by making it customized. Like, Siri can't always know what you're thinking. And so, okay, we'll just tell Siri what to say and you can choose. Like, that was their big push when they first announced Shortcuts, was you can like assign, this is what you tell to my little canister right there. And that little canister is going to translate into my lights, for example, and then change my lights, when you're not trying to play a song instead.
As usual with MacVoices live discussions, what we think will be a short conversation about a topic goes into something a lot more in-depth and a lot more important, and that's what happened with automation this time around. There's still a little bit to go in the next edition of MacVoices before we shift topics, so I want you to come back and hear the rest of the automation discussion and then find out more. That's next time on MacVoices. I'm Chuck Joyner, and I hope you will join us then. Until then, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.